Hello, good evening. A woman who was filmed hitting and kicking an 80-year-old man to the ground in Coventry city centre has been sentenced to 2 years in custody. Coral Millerchip, who claimed Joginder Singh, who had dementia, had touched her first, provoking the assault. He later died. She pleaded guilty and was handed 2 years in a Young Offenders Institute, plus a further year and 8 months for an unrelated burglary. Callum Watkinson's report contains footage of the attack.
Coral Millerchip crossed paths with Joginder Singh, an 80-year-old with dementia, in Coventry in August last year. This is what happened next. Slapped, kicked and pushed to the ground, Mr. Singh was left with a bloodied nose and black eye. Millerchip then stands over him and spits in his face. This footage was published on the internet, which led to a brief manhunt for and the arrest of Coral Millerchip. Mr. Singh died 3 months later, though his death was unrelated to this assault. Sentencing Millerchip to 2 years in prison, Her Honour Judge Sylvia de Bertadano told her this attack had taken away what little independence Joginder Singh had left in the remaining months of his life. This was a man who was clearly very vulnerable, she told her, due both to his age and his condition. If his condition wasn't apparent to you, his age should have been. Millerchip was given an additional 20-month sentence for an unrelated burglary. 3 years, 8 months in total. She served 9 months already on remand. Callum Watkinson, ITV News, at the Warwickshire Justice Centre in Leamington Spa.
A man from the West Midlands has appeared in court charged with breaching the conditions of a terror order. The man, who can only be identified as GG for legal reasons, is accused of 2 offences under the Terrorism Prevention and Investigation Measures. He was remanded in custody and will appear this month. A man from Wednesbury has been charged in connection with an alleged child sex slavery ring. Radko Karchnak, who's 20 and from Walsall Street, was one of 8 men and women charged following raids carried out across the Midlands, Kent and Yorkshire. They're charged with 36 offences, including rape and false imprisonment. Karchnak and 6 of the others have been remanded in custody. 2,000 fewer police officers are working in the Midlands today than they were 4 years ago, a drop of 15%. Birmingham Labour MP Jack Dromey, who's also the Shadow Police Minister, revealed the figures to ITV News Central and said as the police presence on the streets declines, some crimes are up by around 20%, such as violence and public order offences. Andy Bevan has the full story.
Police trying to protect people and property during the riots of 2011. Even back then, their numbers were declining after the government's spending review ordered budget cuts across the board. Now, according to figures obtained from the Home Office by Birmingham Erdington MP and Shadow Policing Minister Jack Dromey, all 4 forces in the West Midlands region are counting the cost of those cuts. Warwickshire lost 166 officers between 2010 and 2013. West Mercia is down by 355. Staffordshire just surpasses that number with 360 fewer, while West Midlands Police has shed 1,171 officers, a drop of almost 15%. In contrast, says Mr Dromey, certain crimes in the West Midlands area are on the increase. Public order offences have risen 19%. Shoplifting is up 20%, and some violent crimes have jumped by 21%.
There is a clear link between the number of bobbies on the beat on the one hand and crime on the other. And if you cut 1,171 police officers from the West Midlands, inevitably what you start to see is crime once again going up.
The West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner, Labour's Bob Jones, blames the coalition government for cutting too far too soon and says it's the larger forces which have come off worst.
The way it's made the reductions have been an absolutely flat rate way, which means the areas with the greatest needs, which have the greatest grant, are taking a much bigger cut than those with lower crime, less problems.
In percentage terms, Staffordshire has seen a bigger reduction in officer numbers than West Midlands, down almost 17%. But here, the Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner says he's ditched the mountains of station-based paperwork faced by many beat bobbies and thrown out obsolete technology to make the force more efficient.
We're getting straight back to proper frontline policing in communities, and the force welcome that. So I'm afraid I think it's quite an exciting time for policing. I don't think it's the black picture that's being painted. And what I absolutely won't do, and have said from the word go, you don't just throw more and more and more money at something which is fundamentally not working properly. And that, I think, is what Mr Drome is suggesting.
Today, the Home Office told ITV News that in the West Midlands police area, overall crime is down by 17% since the last election. The force itself said, "We've had to save £126 million over 4 years, and as the force's biggest overhead cost is staffing, it was inevitable that cuts would have to be made to the number of policing posts." Andy Bevan, ITV News.
More new houses have been built in Birmingham than anywhere else in the UK outside of London, according to new figures. The National House Building Council says almost 3,500 homes were registered in 2013. Nearly 800 more were built in Birmingham than in Manchester. And finally tonight, news of the Malvern Spring Festival, which is underway, marking the start of the summer season for gardeners. Around 90,000 visitors are expected over the 4-day event. This year, the 100th anniversary of the First World War is being remembered by some designers with memorabilia and photographs. Another show garden features a beach scene complete with paella hut. Organisers say they're trying to attract more visitors by combining gardening with celebrity chefs and gourmet cuisine. But what is the weather forecast looking like for it? Here's James Wright.
What's in store for today? ITV Local Weather, sponsored by CenterParcs.
Good evening. I'm afraid to say we start the weekend on a bit of a wet note and plenty of showers once a band of rain moves through overnight. It starts off relatively light to moderate, but we're expecting a slightly heavier burst to move through. Quite a sustained spell of wet weather through the night, but at least it's going to stop us from getting a frost. Tomorrow morning, bright and breezy and showery. Some of these showers quite heavy in nature, and into the afternoon I think we could hear 1 or 2 rumbles of thunder. Stay out of the showers and in the sunny spells, 13 Celsius, feeling a little bit fresh because of the breeze, and then more showers, particularly heavy on Sunday and over the next few days. Have a good night. Night-night.
ITV Local Weather, sponsored by CenterParcs.
Right, that's it for now. Don't forget to check out our website to get live updates as the news happens across the central region. But for now, though, good night.